This is Creating Your Encore Career and Becoming a Silver Entrepreneur with your host, Lynn Freest. Lynn will share ideas and expert advice from people that are walking in your shoes and living their encore careers, where they want and at the pace they want. You'll start a company of one with confidence and knowledge to live a fulfilled life of freedom and ease. Lynn is a coach and leadership consultant whose mission is to show senior leaders and experts how to start something refreshing and new after a full career in the corporate environment.
Well, welcome to this episode of the podcast, Creating Your Encore Career and Becoming a Silver Entrepreneur. This is episode 116, and it's about how to sell your skill. A conversation with Paul Klein. Making the leap from being a corporate leader and expert into becoming a solopreneur can be daunting, but the rewards are great. You can work when you want, where you want, and do the work you love. And I can be that guide and thinking partner for you. As your coach, I will help you go farther and faster based on what I've learned from being on this journey for several years. If you're having thoughts about starting an encore career, please contact me and take the self-assessment quiz. The quiz will help you get some quick clarity around what's possible for you in the future. And after you've listened to the podcast, I encourage you to visit my website at lynnfreest.com and download the PDF as a guide to help you take the next steps on your pursuit of an encore career. Well, today we're going to be talking with Paul Klein. I've known Paul and admired his work for several years. He is a true master in the ideas and principles of pricing. We'll hear in our conversations how he can help you learn how to price your products and get the value that you're worth. Paul also has unstoppable energy and enthusiasm for his work, as you'll see. Well, in 2009, at the peak of the recession, as layoffs in the economy were tanking, and with a family to support and a hefty mortgage to go along with it, Paul chose to leave a safe and secure, successful 18-year career. He was at the top of his position, with little commute in his hometown, and with full benefits, retirement, and a six-figure salary. And yet, he left to start his own consulting business. Although he was experiencing a very successful career, he felt unfulfilled and miserable and just couldn't take it anymore. But following the principles of his virtual mentors such as Dan Miller and others, he decided he had to create his own way, figure it out, and quit relying on others. He didn't make excuses, blame his employee, the system, or others. He looked inward and said, I am going to figure this out and make it work. Coming up in our conversation with Paul, some of the questions we'll talk about is how Paul created 3 businesses after leaving his corporate career, how not to price your services to your own wallet, but to the value you're providing to your customer, why you should use price options as you consider, what you're going to deliver to the customer. And then he's going to talk a little bit about his upcoming streaming service for entrepreneurs. Welcome to Paul. Welcome, Paul, and thanks for being on the podcast. And I'd like to start off the podcast, as always, by having you introduce yourself, a little bit about your history transition, and then we'll jump into some questions.
Awesome. Glad to be here, Lynn. Glad to share some stories and some encouragement for those listening. And my name's Paul Klein. I am a full-time W-9 K-1 since 2009. I had an 18-year career in corporate and local government, even better, more bureaucracy. And I was after an 18-year career with a full mortgage in 2009, 3 kids, I found out I was an entrepreneur stuck in a bureaucracy. So I made the jump and everybody thought I was crazy. They were like, you can't leave right now. That's the heat of the recession. If you think back in 2009, Lynn, you probably remember this. It was a very challenging time, with the bank crisis, mortgage crisis and everything. So my dad was like, are you sure you want to do this? And even my wife was like, I know you're miserable in your job and you really want to make this transition, but just don't tell me when you quit. And then what happened one day, it was a weekend, it was Sunday, I think. And my wife says, hey, do you think on Tuesday you can go get the kids from school and get off work early? Because I have a doctor's appointment. And I said, I can get the kids whenever you want now. And she's like, no, you didn't do it. And I made that jump. Certainly we can talk about this more, Lynn, if you'd like, but I got the boat closer to the dock. I put some things in place. It wasn't just, I didn't make a blind leap I had started consulting on the side, and I've grown that into a high six-figure business to this day, as well as 3 other businesses since then. So I have a SaaS company, consulting company. And then the one thing I just mentioned to you that I'm super excited about, we're getting ready to launch a streaming service for entrepreneurs that we can talk about later. But that's kind of me in a nutshell. I do business consulting, business coach, and happy to be here and talk with you.
Great. I wondered, stepping back to your personal transition, what were a couple of things you felt you had to change in mindset-wise as you made that jump from corporate to entrepreneur?
Yeah, the biggest one is K1 or W9 from W2. You've got to have a mindset of you're in business for yourself. So you're not going to get compensated hourly. So you can't just think, I used to get paid $35 an hour, so I'll charge 38. And it just doesn't work like that. There's so much about running a business when you're on your own. It's a beautiful thing, which I really love now. But at the beginning, a lot of the folks probably listening, they're thinking about making that transition. You've got to change your mindset from an employee to an entrepreneur. And the biggest thing, one of my biggest platforms or things that I talk about on my podcast, Pricing is Positioning podcast, is we're so tied to the hourly wage, especially coming from corporate or in an organized employment configuration, and realize you're going to have more than just one client. With a single employer, you have one client, your employer. When you make that transition, you're going to have multiple clients, multiple sources of revenue, and you're not always going to get paid for time. And time is the quickest way to fail as an entrepreneur, consultant, coach when you go out on your own. I really like to help people move away from that. And we can talk about some of those strategies that I teach.
Sure. Yeah, I think that is a big thing. One, you may put in more than 40 hours a week as an entrepreneur, but you're not going to get paid for every hour. So you got to figure out how that all works.
Exactly.
Again, in that transition, if you could just think back, what are the first couple of, I'll say, tools or things you learned that you didn't have to use in your corporate job, I'll say?
Yeah, one of you make the rules, and that can be hindering or helpful. If you come from a very structured background where you show up at time, you get told what to do essentially, or even if you're a C-suite or a mid-manager or something like that, and you have some autonomy, even though you're on a salary, you're still expected to work 40 hours a week in the organization's favor. But when you want to take off early, it's not always viewed correctly. But anyway, it's that freedom. That freedom can be such a great thing because now a lot of us have NDAs and different things that prevent us from working with various firms or organizations. And man, it's the wild, wild west. I've bartered golf, holes for my expertise. I've bartered hotels. I had a client up in Maine and we spent 2 weeks, my wife and I, going through bed and breakfast for 2 weeks while I consulted. And so you can barter in a lot of different ways that you can't necessarily do in an organization. But yeah, just that biggest thing was the fear of making the jump. We're all told that you are supposed to go to college, get the degree, go to work for the same company for 40 years and then retire. And so this thought or this notion of going out on your own and creating your own destiny is very foreign, especially for people our age or older. I'm a Gen Xer, so Gen X or boomers especially, it's very counterintuitive. But the reality is once you embrace that and you really write your own ticket, and once you have some success, then it really opens up a whole new world of opportunity. And I know people who, talking to a lady friend of mine, she works for the state of California and she's just made the jump 4 months ago. And I don't know when this is going to air, but it was over the summer. And I talked to her, I go, well, how do you like it 4 months after? And she's all, if I would have known it was going to be this good, I would have done this 10 years ago. She was at the zoo with her grandchildren. She's still consulting, still engaged, making more money than she ever was. That's hopefully a huge encourager for most of you out there that are thinking about this.
I also wanted to talk with you about your expertise, the pricing is positioning. And again, as people are considering this jump into the working for themselves, what are some of the starting points that you would say people need to think about as they get into the whole concept of, hey, I got to price my work here?
Yeah, that's the biggest thing and why I got into this. I have been consulting in a vertical with a lot of Fortune 500 companies, Taco Bell, Starbucks, and those. And I don't do pricing for them. It's a very niche consulting that I do around kind of architecture and engineering in that vertical. But through that process for the last 15 years, I was always pricing and bidding and a lot of 4 or 5 figure and some 6-figure projects in there. And I just learned a lot of things. And so when I started talking to other business owners and freelancers and coaches, consultants and so forth, like myself, and I'm like, you're charging that much for your expertise? You've done 28 years in your vertical and you're only charging that. And what I found is that most of us in the expertise base, or we're trading our expertise for dollars, so to speak, or we're being paid for our expertise, we undervalue that. We so undervalue that. And a lot of times it's because we've done it for so long, or it comes easy to us, or we're passionate about it, that we don't value it. Say, that comes easy to me. It'll only take me a little bit. And we go back to that. Oh, it's time. But what the reality is what comes common to you is golden to other people. And you can't do what we call selling to your own wallet. And I started studying all the pricing guys and gals. There's a bunch of them on my podcast: Blair Enns, Ron Baker, Jonathan Stark. I mean, they're all, Chris Doe has been on there. He's a graphic designer, but they all talk about not selling to your own wallet. And what you want to do, and Blair Enns says this best, is price the client, not your service. And I had been doing this intuitively for years. What I charge Starbucks is totally different than what I would charge a mom and pop on Main Street in my hometown. It's a totally different mindset. And so you don't devalue your expertise or charge the same price for the same service. You price the value for that client. And once you make that shift, now a whole world of opportunity, something you may have only been getting paid 4 figures for, all of a sudden is now 5 or even 6 figures for the same service, because you've refined that. And I don't believe we should be penalized because we're good at something and it takes us less time. It's the value that you're providing to the organization or the client that's key.
Yeah, absolutely. I was talking with somebody recently that helps set up quality systems. Again, small companies and stuff like that. But still, when you think of the value having that quality system will bring to that business, it's a lot. And could, in fact, make or break the company, to be quite honest. So some of these things are, like you say, I've done it for years. It's easy for me. It's magic to them.
Exactly. And not just, I was making 35, so I'll charge $150 an hour. Well, that still puts a cap on what you can make, A. And B, it automatically puts you in conflict with your client. You have a subliminal force against you to make it last longer because you're going to make more money. And even though we don't do that ethically, it's just there. It's clunky. And then to the client, they want you to hurry up and get it done because they know you're charging by the hour. But when we shift that conversation to, hey, it's a flat rate, $1,500, you'll get X, Y, and Z result. They don't care how long it takes you. If it takes you 5 minutes or 50 hours, what they want is the result. And that's the biggest key, focusing on that result and the value and the cost savings and so forth that you can help that organization either save or gain in revenue gains.
Sure. Well, I know even in my own case, the guy we both know helped me put together an early website that I had. It may have taken him 5 minutes, but the price was well worth it because it was beautiful and it was that more appealing to my customers and stuff. So whether it was 5 minutes or 5 hours, it was worth every penny of it.
Yeah, the result you wanted. Absolutely.
Yeah. Again, as people are getting started in this whole business, I know there's also the idea of, okay, how do I have this pricing conversation, or how do I even open the conversation with a customer? Again, we're not used to selling projects. To be honest, we're not used to selling at all. But then more importantly, how do we actually get to where we get to ask for money?
Yeah, that's a great question. And one that a lot of us making that shift struggle with. And what I would just encourage you to do is you have to force yourself to have that conversation with your clients. And if you don't, it will actually devalue you and position you as a rookie, so to speak. A confident consultant, a confident professional who's being paid for the expertise is willing to talk about that and not wait till the end. Now, there is the premise that the sooner you bring up price in a sales negotiation or in a conversation, the more likely it's going to be lower. So you got to wait for the timing to be right. But at some point, you have to have that conversation. And so what I've always done, and these are some strategies that I teach in my pricing is positioning course, and it basically is wrapped around 3 pricing strategies that I teach. And this is based in behavioral economics. It's based in value-based pricing. You've heard $1 Million Consulting from Alan Weiss. All of this is from these different methodologies that I put together and stolen from, if you will, but also have done in practice and didn't realize why. But the first strategy is always anchor high. Okay. And what I mean by a high anchor is basically you want to have the first price you see or hear is going to be on the higher end. So if I'm in a discovery call, and it's always called a discovery call, not a solutions call, refrain from providing solutions. Otherwise, they won't call you back because they got everything they want. But in the discovery call, and whether this is an email or a phone conversation, I'll say, yeah, this is great. I really think our solution can help you. I can help you out there achieve those goals. It's going to be in the $35,000 range. And you just drop that anchor, go silent, let that sink into the client and avoid that awkward silence. and let that sink in. And then if the client will react in one of two ways, they'll either flop on the floor and foam at the mouth, so you're not even in the same conversation. So they're A, not a good client, or B, you can refer them to somebody else, which will give you great respect with them, and they'll probably come back to you later. But if they say, that sounds great, send it over and I'll take a look at it. Now you know you're in the ballpark. That 35 needs to be that higher end. What we tend to do when we first make this transition is we want to get the job. We're so desperate, and we get the stench of desperation, and we want to just, get the job. So we'll go real low. We'll say 15 when it should be closer to probably 25 or 30, but we're scared we're going to lose the job. So we say 15. Now you're working from that 15 down as opposed to the 30 or 35 down. So that's why we say anchor high and throw that out early in the discovery and in the conversation. Even in an email, I'll say the same thing. It's great talking to you. This will be in the $35,000 range, even though it may be lower, but I can, based on that information, I can then craft my proposal to accommodate the reaction that you get from the prospect. And then number two is using price options. So often we give a single price, and Ron Baker says it best, is when you use price option, it changes the value proposition in the client's mind from if we're going to work with Lynn to how we're going to work with Lynn. Okay. So it really does. It creates it's based in behavioral economics, and it really shifts that value conversation in the prospect's mind from if they're going to work with Lynn to how, because now they have price options they can compare. And if you think about this, Lynn, last time we went to Starbucks, what is there? There's the Grande, the Venti, there's 3 sizes, 3 price options. You go to the car wash, there's 3 price options. You go to McDonald's, all the big brands, everybody does it. Apple, look at the new MacBooks. There's 3 MacBooks. If you go look what they released yesterday, and there's 3 price options for that exact reason, because everybody wants to determine what that value is to themselves. And so using that anchor with price options. And then the last one is a single page proposal, and keeping it super simple. A lot of times when we first start out, we throw in all the references, all the people we've worked with, how great our company is. Lynn, I'm not sure if you've been on the other side of a procurement process, but I have. And the first thing we do when we get the big old book of proposals, we flip to the last page and look at the pricing sheet. And so that can set yourself apart as a consultant or an expertise entrepreneur, and just shoot that single page over with all the value that they have. Once they hook or they're ready to engage with you, in your service agreement or your contract, you can have all those disclaimers and all that stuff, but make it easy for the client. So let me recap that real quick. Anchor high is strategy number 1. Strategy 2 is use pricing options. Always use pricing options. And number 3 is a single page proposal.
Great. Thank you. And I've seen that on your podcasts and stuff. So I've always remembered those pillars. And it brings up an interesting thing. You mentioned anchor high. And I always remember the story of a colleague that was a speaker. And she was saying that somebody went and pitched to a company a speech, and they gave them a number of, I'll say $5,000. And the reply she got, we only hire experts or something in our field. Professionals, yeah. And she was an expert. So she said, okay, that taught me a lesson. Yeah.
Ken Davis, I don't know if you know Ken Davis.
Yeah.
He's a friend of mine and teaches the SCORE conference, Christian comedian, great guy. And he has the same story. When he first made that shift from corporate, he dropped a number, I think it was $500 or $1,500 for a keynote at a corporate event, an annual business meeting or something like that. And the guy was all really excited to hire Ken because he's such a great speaker. And Ken, that was the most money he had ever saw. And same thing, he said $1,500. And the guy goes, oh, I'm sorry, we only hire professionals. And he hung up basically because he was expecting $15,000.
Yeah.
So that's where selling to your own wallet or pricing your services based on what you think they are valuable to you shortcuts you and can actually undermine you from your ideal clients or those upper tier clients.
Now, the other thing is you mentioned your one pager is I think of, we always start out thinking it's about us, and it's not, it's about them. So it's what's the value you provide, or what are they going to get out of this? If you start talking about their benefits rather than your cost, I would think that's a much more interesting conversation.
Yeah. Features and technical specs, all boring. They'll open some doors, but where the sale's made is in the emotions, the results, the benefits to the client in terms of results, basically. And it can be as simple as you're going to look good because this contract's going to go so well, your bosses won't ever question you. Sometimes that's all it takes, because I was just in a 5-figure interview for a project last week. We got it, by the way, which we're pretty excited about. The last thing I said with them, I go, if you go with our firm, you're going to be rest assured you got the best firm that's done this for 12 years, and you won't have your council, your board of supervisors, your political appointees questioning you why you chose us because it's going to get done right and on budget. And I don't know if that did it, but we got the job. But it wasn't about all the technical features and what we were going to do from my perspective. It was what that person was going to get that was going through this procurement process. So little strategy.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd like to shift gears a little bit, and it folds into, I think, one of your new things there. But I've thought too that as we get from the corporate world into the entrepreneurial world, we need to find a new crowd, a new herd to go with. And I'm sure that was your experience. I know we've all connected with some of the similar people to help us grow in our way. But what did you find? And then I know that it ties into what you're going to be doing next.
So that's a great question, Lynn. And yeah, there's so many great mentors and resources online. Dan Miller has always been someone I've listened to and read his books. And finding those types of people, Mike Kim is a great guy. He's always helped me out. And there's so many others that I could go. But even if you can't hire a high-end coach right now because you're just starting out or whatever, find content. I mean, Lynn, you've got great podcasts and resources. So maybe for some of the listeners who are on the fence, listen to this podcast, Lynn's that guy that has that experience. And it's not that you have to be the all-knowing guru, Tony Robbins, mastered everything. It's just finding someone that's a few steps ahead of you. And what I've found, and I'm sure this is how you are, Lynn, because you're a character guy, and that is you coach someone and you bring someone along you, and then all of a sudden they pass you. That's the greatest thing ever. It's not about competition. It's about uplifting other people and helping them achieve all that they can do. Yeah, I would encourage your listeners to find those mentors virtually or join the masterminds or coaching to take you to that next level, because we achieve nothing in seclusion. We've got to surround ourselves with people who are like-minded, similar goals, that can be a resource to you. I mean, I'm excited right now. I'm launching this new streaming network for entrepreneurs. And in my mastermind with Dan Miller, it was just this last weekend, I was telling everybody about it. All of a sudden now I've got David Hancock from Morgan James Publishing is going to be a guest. And so just by networking and being surrounding myself with those people, all these new resources just came along. Once they heard I had a new venture or goal, that just helps you grow exponentially faster than you would by yourself.
Yeah, and it sounds like your streaming service will be a great resource for people who are considering an encore career to get out there. I'm sure you're going to have, just from the names you've mentioned, there's going to be a lot of wisdom and knowledge that's shared on your new service.
Yeah, what it's going to be is it's a streaming service. And I don't know if you're like me, Lynn, there's not a lot of good TV on sometimes. And as entrepreneurs, we go to the couch, we kick up. And I love like the Shark Tank, and I love The Profit or Billionaire Next Door. They had Grant Cardone on there. That was so fascinating. Just watching entrepreneurs struggle, so much better than the news or who got kicked off the island. And so I'm like, man, why isn't there a service or a show about entrepreneurs like Lynn and Mike Kim and Dan Miller and all these great people? Not these people with private jets making $300 million a year, but just for the 60 million of us that are single person, silver entrepreneurs or entrepreneurs in general. Why isn't there anything like that? And so I said, I'm going to create it. So I partnered up with Kendall Johnson from Underdog Films, and he is a Netflix-trained Vancouver film producer. These little mini docuseries we're going to do on entrepreneurs, real entrepreneurs that aren't billionaires. They're making 6 and 7 figures. We're going to take you behind the scenes, and you're going to learn about their struggles, their failures. There's some crying in there, but it's in a Netflix quality, super high produced docuseries that I think a lot of people will get an inside look at these people that they don't get anywhere else. And it's all real. And so for those of you that are thinking about jumping, you'll be able to go, I'm not as big as that guy or gal yet, but she's done such a great job. I'm only like 3 steps behind that. So I know I can get there. So it's going to be motivational and inspirational as well. So we're excited about it. It's going to launch in January. It's called Visible TV. If you go to visibletv.com, you can find out about more. But that's my Q4, Q1 initiative in Paul's entrepreneurial world.
It sounds super. I encourage people in their encore careers to say, you've got expertise, but a lot of the other expertise you might need is easier to find than ever before. And you may have to go find somebody who's in their 20s for some of it, but that's okay too. Creating marvelous TV shows, creating podcasts, creating any number of things is much more possible than it was before. So it's easier to start that encore career and really be something worth connecting with.
Yeah, absolutely. And don't feel intimidated by all the technology or don't have that self-limiting belief. Oh, I don't know how to do all that Facebook stuff and this and that. I didn't either. I find people that know a little bit more about it or help me with it. And you just learn as you go. And it's all about having that growth mindset as opposed to a fixed mindset. And, just get in the game. I have a saying, you're only 50 something, so get with it. Or you're only 60 something, so get with it. Just get in the game and go take action and don't be afraid. The 20-year-olds will say, oh, I don't have enough experience. I can't do it. And then the 50 and 60-year-olds or even 7-year-olds will say, oh, I'm too old. I can't do it. I know people in their 60s, 70s that are killing it, having the best times of their lives. And like Colonel Sanders, he didn't bake his first batch of chicken until he was 65, I think.
A friend of my mother's who's in her 90s, her friend every year had a project. And as she was turning 95, her project that year was to learn Italian. That's the stuff. It keeps you young. So
it does. Keeps you young, your mind engaged.
Yeah. And most of the people who are, your age, my age, we could have another 20, 30 years and probably don't want to spend it all on the golf course. Find something that's exciting to you.
Yeah, absolutely.
I thank you much, Paul. I really appreciate all the wisdom, knowledge, and energy that you shared with us today. And we will include all the links to how to contact you and for your new streaming show that's coming out. Any last thoughts you want to pass on to our potential silver entrepreneurs?
I would just say if you're facing fear, make your vision greater than your fear. So if you're thinking about going out on your own and you're scared or whatever, think about the result that you want to get and make that vision so powerful and so exciting and get behind it. It trumps the fear out. And that's when I've had my most success. So make the vision of where you want to be, what you want to do, whether it's family, business, career, make that vision greater than the fear. You'll rock it and get through it.
Okay. Thank you, Paul. And again, my appreciation for all your work. And we'll talk to you again soon sometime.
Thanks for having me, Lynn. Great talking to you.
Again, many thanks to Paul on sharing his journey and insights. Some of the questions we covered in a wide range of questions was how Paul created 3 businesses after leaving his corporate career, how not to price your services to your own wallet, but to the value you provide to the customer, why you should use price options, and a little bit about his upcoming streaming service for entrepreneurs. So please refer to all these resources in the show notes, including Paul's website and programs, and the links to the Visible TV, his new program. Remember, with an Encore career, the rewards are great. You can work when you want, where you want, and do the work you love. As your coach, I will help you go farther and faster based on what I've learned from being on this journey for several years. You have the time, attention, and money to make this leap, so let me help you do it. If you're having thoughts about starting an Encore career, please contact me and take the self-assessment quiz. The quiz will help you get some quick clarity around what's possible for you in the future. After you listen to the podcast, I always encourage you to visit my website at linfrias.com and download the PDF as a guide to help you take the next steps in pursuit of your beginning Encore career. Well, thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.